And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. Shabbat Shalom to everyone here in the congregation. It's good to be here, amen. And the folks on the Skype irrigation. It's a blessing. Today I'd like to spend some time going over our understanding of how we reckon the calendar of Yahweh. Now, this week we will look most specifically at how to reckon the month, and next week we'll talk about other aspects. I've been asked some questions lately about how we reckon things, and I realize that haven't talked about this in a while, so we're going to do that today. And I would like to say to folks that may be watching this at home, if you find that our understanding conflicts with yours and you're not able to handle it, then you might want to go find something else to watch. But before you do, I would like to ask for you to look at one verse in the Scripture. Turn with me to Proverbs chapter 18. Proverbs chapter 18. Going to be on page 743 in the old ISR. Everybody there? Proverbs 18 and verse 13. And it says, He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and a shame to him. Okay? All right. Don't get me wrong. You may be completely familiar with our understanding. You've studied it for yourself, and you simply don't ascribe to it. And that's one thing, you know. If, on the other hand, you just dismiss it outright because it's not what so-and-so said on a $40 DVD set that you watched or that you gave money for, or my friend says, or my pastor says, or whoever says, whatever, and you just reject it without hearing the matter, then it is folly and a shame to you. Amen? It's in the book. It's in the book. All right, the next thing is this. It's not my intention to offend anyone. I firmly believe that the vast majority of us are reckoning the calendar the way that we believe because we believe that it's correct and we want to be pleasing to our Father Yahweh. Amen? And we want to do what He says. All right? And I believe that when Yahshua comes back and sets us all down for our Torah studies, all right, and we discover all the places where we were missing the mark, we will immediately adjust to what Yahshua is saying right then because we want to do what's right. You know, even people who won't say GD when they're cursing, who become offended when they hear others say that because they think that this is taking the Father's name in vain, all right? And they have a deep reverence for the Father, all right, and are going devoutly on what they understand, they will gladly embrace the name of the Father when they learn it. Amen? All right? And I'm sure we will all be shocked at some of the misunderstandings that we have. And I pray that Yahweh will be merciful for our errors, because if we in our hearts want to be pleasing to Him, we will regret our errors but quickly embrace the truth because we want to be walking in the truth already. Amen? Amen. All right. So please understand that I am in no way questioning your devotion if our understanding about this is different. I'm not. Now, we used to reckon the calendar like the majority of believers, and I was as committed to Yahweh then as I am now. But after trying to prove from the Scriptures the things that we used to do, we have adjusted our understanding And that's what I'm sharing with you today. Now, I will point out some things that some other folks are doing, not because I question their devotion, but to compare what they are doing to Scripture. And I think that's a standard by which these things should be measured. Amen? All right. So let's get to it. The name of this message today is By Delight of the Slivery Moon. Not by the light, but rather by delight of the slivery, not silvery. You see, if you put D in front of many words, you get the opposite of the root word. All right. For instance, you put D in front of the word active, all right? Yeah, or activate, activate, which means to make active. And then all of a sudden you get the word deactivate, which means not active. Or criminalize, which means to make illegal, you add D in front of it, you get decriminalized, which means it's legal now. All right? By delight. All right. Now, you see there's a lot of difference of opinion among believers about how and when Yahweh expects us to begin our months in order to keep His appointed times. And they are appointed times. They are appointments, like Brother Pat was talking about a while ago. They are appointments, and that's why it's important. I believe that Yahweh has given us a system to know how to reckon when we are to begin our months, and that it's not when we see the silver sliver of the moon, but rather when the light diminishes and we see no form at all, when He takes the moon's light away. In other words, by delight of the slivery moon, and thus the title. Now, aside from the influence of Hasatan, centuries of social change, or societal change, being dispersed because of disobedience to Yahweh and therefore separated from His system in our present day society, etc., one of the reasons for all the confusion is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of Scripture telling us what a new moon looks like. There's not, right? Do you think that it's just a little strange that, especially since keeping Yahweh's appointed times are so important to Him, that He would put in there, or that He wouldn't put in there what a new moon looks like? Is that kind of strange? Well, not if the people already understood. You see, I don't think that He ever tells us what a camel or a rabbit or a pig looks like either. But He said that we were to abominate their carcasses and not to eat them. And not to touch them, or else we would not be set apart. And it's pretty important to be set apart to Yahweh. Amen? Right? But evidently, He did not need to tell the people because they already knew what these animals looked like. And I can't say for sure, but this seems plausible to me. I mean, everyone knows what a full moon looks like without a lot of explanation, right? Okay. So there is not a great abundance of Scripture on, or that speaks to the visible characteristics of the new moon. We are, however, going to look at some of what we do have and see if we can shed any light on the subject. Ba-doom, boom. All right. Again, for those believers who look to a visible crescent moon, I believe that they are desirous to serve Yahweh, and this is a study to see what the Scripture has to say. It is in no way intended to be derogatory or condescending, but will hopefully be educational. All right? Now, if Yahweh showed you from the Scripture that without a doubt, or even with, that there was more evidence for the observance of a crescent than a concealed moon, how many of you would change? Okay, a lot of hands went up here, folks. Why? Because we want to be pleasing to Yahweh no matter what, and we look to the Scripture to find those instructions. All right? Now, if Yahweh says one thing, but a man-made system says another, who should we follow? Yahweh. All right? No matter what. I have to believe that most of our brethren who observe the Crescent feel the same way. You know, the trouble starts when men and women start going to great lengths and eisegesis searches rather than exegesis searches to find out what the Scripture has to say, so as to be able to hold fast to their already held belief rather than embracing the belief that Yahweh really intends. And you know what? This is akin to rebellion. Right? Do you know the difference between eisegesis and exegesis? Okay. Eisegesis means go into the Scripture to find the proof for what we already believe or hold to be true. Exegesis, on the other hand, means going to the Scripture to see what it has to say regardless of what our preconceived ideas are. Okay? And if we'll be honest, most of us usually start our studies hoping to be validated. I mean, you know, we usually do that. All right? It gives me a feeling of peace and satisfaction when I look to the Word and discover that I have proper understanding. I mean, do you share those feelings when you study? Sure you do. All right? But sometimes we're confronted with the fact that we have been without proper understanding. At this point, we can do two things. One of two things. We can become anxious and start a scrambling process. All right? Darting all through the Scriptures to find validation for what we already believe, which is a common thing to do. Or we can continue to study and see if the new understanding is supported. All right? The way in which we get our peace back is we bring ourselves into compliance with Yahweh, with what we have learned as we gain further proper understanding. Isn't that right? All right. One thing that is important for us to understand is that when our Crescent observing brethren say that there's not a single instance in the Scripture of a new moon ever being concealed or hidden, they're somewhat correct. Somewhat correct. And if we stop right there, we might be persuaded. But there is more. See, on the flip side of that, there is not a single instance in the entire Scripture of a new moon being revealed or exposed as a crescent either. As a matter of fact, there's not a place in the entire Scripture where a crescent moon is ever used to indicate any defining part of the lunar cycle. And that's important. The Israelites had a term for the lunar cycle. The word is YHWH. From Strong's, it says, from an unused root of uncertain signification, a lunation, that is, month. Right? That's what YHWH is. Brown Driver's Briggs says, month, lunar cycle, moon, month, calendar month. Okay? So they had a term for that. All right, we're going to look at that more in a moment. There is also a Hebrew word used in the Scripture for a crescent. There is. The word is saharon, and it's still used today in modern Hebrew for a crescent, saharon. The problem with it, though, is there is not, is that in every single scriptural incident, it's describing some form of pagan jewelry that was used, or some other form of jewelry that was being used that's not pleasing to Yahweh, and not for timekeeping. Right? Let's take a look. Turn with me to Judges chapter 8. Sopertine, chapter 8. I'm going to start reading it on verse 20, going to be on 261, the old ISR. Judges chapter 8, verse 20. You there, Joanne? Okay. And he said to Yether, his firstborn, rise, slay them. But the youth would not draw his sword. for he was afraid because he was still a youth. And Zebach and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and fall on us, for as a man is, so is his might. So Gideon arose and slew Zebach and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments which were on their camels' necks. You see that? So the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, both you and your son, also your son's son, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. All right? But Gideon said to them, I do not rule over you, nor does my son rule over you. Yahweh does rule over you. And Gideon said to them, I have a request to make of you, that each of you give me the ring from his spoil. For they had rings of gold, because they were Ishmaelites. And they said, We shall certainly give them. And they spread out a garment, and each man threw into it the ring from his spoil. And the weight of the gold rings that he requested was 1,700 pieces of gold, besides the crescent ornaments, and the pendants, and the purple robes, which were on the sovereigns of Midian, and besides the chains that were around the camel's neck. Okay? Now, the next place we want to look to is Isaiah chapter 3. YHWH chapter 3. Page 415. I'm going to start reading in verse 16. Isaiah 3:16. By the way, if there are any of you young ladies out there who are walking contrary to Yahweh, you might want to pay particular attention to this next one. This is what it is. Verse 16. And Yahweh said, Because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with outstretched necks and seductive eyes, walking and mincing as they go, making a jingling with their feet. Therefore, Yahweh shall smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yahweh expose their nakedness. In that day, Yahweh takes away the finery of the anklets, and the headbands, and the, what's that next word? Crescents, the pendants, the bracelets, and the veils, the headdresses, and the leg ornaments, and the sashes, and the perfume bottles, and the amulets, the rings and the nose jewels, the costly robes, and the cloaks, and the shawls, and the purses, the mirrors, and the fine linen, and the turbans, and the large veils. And it shall be, instead of a sweet fragrance, a smell of decay, and instead of a belt, a rope, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a festal robe, a girding of sackcloth, and branding instead of loveliness. All right? So, we read through that so that we could see where that's some more jewelry that was not pleasing to Yahweh with the way that the young ladies were conducting themselves. Nevertheless, these are not things that are being used for Yahweh. Amen? Right? But these are the only places in the entire Scripture where Saharon is used, right? Where the word crescent's used. Well, are there any places where we can find evidence of a concealed or dark moon? Well, there's a few. First, we'll look briefly at Psalms 81. Psalm 81, we're going to be on page 691. We're going to read one verse. Psalm 81 in verse 3. Blow the ram's horn at the time of the new moon, at the full moon on our festival day. Now, some of you have got a different translation there because they made some changes between the old ISR and the new ISR, and we'll get to that in a second. All right. Do we think this may have something to do with appointed times right here? When it says, blow the ram's horn at the time of the new moon, at the full moon on our festival day. All right, the word translated as full moon here in Hebrew is the word kisa. All right? This is one place where I believe that the old ISR got it wrong when they translated this as full moon. And I'm not the only one that thinks this, because if you look in Young's literal translation of the Scriptures, it reads, blow in the month. All right, the other one said blow the ram's horn at the time of the new moon. All right, it says, blow in the month the trumpet. See, it's that word month. In the new moon, at the day of our festival. See, it didn't say full moon, it said new moon. Okay? That's Young's. And the new ISR actually says what? Covering. It says the covering there. Now, instead of at the full moon, it says at the covering. All right? The word kisa comes from the root word kasa. Now, wouldn't you expect a word to have some correlation to the root word itself? Like, for instance, the root word of aquarium is what? Aqua. All right? You would expect that an aquarium is where you would put what? Aqua. You'd put water in it, right? You wouldn't expect an aquarium to be a dry, arid environment, would you? No. Okay. A microscope is a scope that you would look through to see little bitty stuff, right? Micro. Right? So back to kisa. What does the word kasa mean? According to Brown Drivers Briggs, Hebrew definitions, number 3680, to cover, conceal, hide, covered, clothe, to spread over, to cover, overwhelm, to cover oneself, clothe oneself. All right, we see a correlation there. So we might expect that kisa has a little something to do with hiding or covering, right? All right. Is that an unreasonable conclusion? Okay. Guess how many times the root word of kisa, is used in the Scriptures? Some of you know. 151 times. All right? That word's in there 151 times. Guess how many of those 151 times it's used in the sense of hiding, concealing, covering over something? Guess how many of those 151? Wild guess. 151. Ding, ding, ding. All 151 times. All 151 times, right? Now, Andrew Roth actually regards them as the same word, so that he counts it as 153 rather than 151, because they're spelled identically the same. All right? All right, so let's look at the other place where this word is used in the Scripture. Proverbs 7:20. Proverbs 7. Page 733. Okay? Proverbs 7:20. It says, he took a bag of silver with him. He comes home on the day of the, what's those next two words? New moon. That word there is kisa. It says covering in the new, okay, on the day of the covering. All right? Now, I don't know why the ISR, the old one, translated one usage of it full moon and another usage of it new moon, but in the newer one they straighten that out. Also in Young's translation it says, a bag of money he has taken in his hand at the day of the new moon, he cometh to his house. So Young's is in agreement with our understanding of that. All right, so there does seem to be at least a term for a type of moon whose root word means concealed, and the translators translate it as having something to do with the moon. Amen? All right. Was that all you got, Stan? Well, if I did, that would still be good. But anyway, I got more. When does Yahweh say a new day starts? Sundown. All right. It's sunset. All right. There was evening and there was morning, the first day, the second day, the third day, etc. Look with me at Leviticus chapter 23. Page 129. Actually, we're going to be on 130 because we're going to start reading verse 27. Leviticus 23. verse 27. On the 10th day of the 7th month is the day of atonement. It shall be a set-apart gathering for you. And you shall afflict your beings, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and you do no work on that same day, for it is the day of atonement to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. Here we go. On the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you observe your Sabbath. That's pretty clear, right? Right? Okay, so we see that Yahweh starts the day at sunset in the evening when the old day ends. Right? Have you ever thought that's kind of strange that you would start a day at sunset? Any of you thought that's kind of strange? All right, let me help you with that. I didn't understand this for a long time, and it dawned on me. All right, now, all right. Actually, it didn't dawn on me. It dusked on me. It dusked on me. See, everything is in motion. I mean, you know, the sun and the earth and the moon, everything it continues to be in motion. All right. We don't have a hard time understanding that when the sun drops off the horizon that the day has ended, right? Since everything is in motion, if the day has ended, the next day has naturally got to begin. You see, that's why that works. The old one ended, the next one picks up, you know, right then. All right. So see, now it doesn't seem so strange anymore, does it? Yeah, midnight does sound stupid. Okay, so we see that Yahweh starts a day at sunset in the evening when the old day ends. All right, the orb of the sun drops below the horizon, and you can no longer see the sun itself, and a new day begins. All right, now, check this out with me. Turn to Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah YHWH chapter 60. Page 461. We're going to start reading in verse 19. Wait till everybody gets there. Isaiah 60, page 19. I'm sorry, verse 19. It's going to be on page 461 where we're going to start reading. Page 461. Y'all didn't get me this time. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19 on page 461 in the old ISR. Ready, set, go. No longer is the sun your light by day, nor does the moon give light to you for brightness. But Yahweh shall be to you an everlasting light, and your Elohim your comeliness. All right? Verse 20. No longer does your sun go down, nor your moon what? Withdraw itself. For Yahweh shall be your everlasting light, and the days of your mourning shall be ended. Okay, now, guess what Hebrew word is translated moon here? It is the word Yerach, the word that we learned earlier that means a lunation, or in other words, the lunar cycle. Is it an accident in this passage that sun go down when a day ends and the new day begins, and the lunar cycle of the moon withdraws itself? Is that just an interesting coincidence? Do you see how those complement each other? They complement each other. You see, we do have some scriptural examples of the moon being concealed and also withdrawing itself, as actually being described as part of the lunar cycle. As part of the lunar cycle. We have no such evidence of a revealed or Saharon crescent moon. All right? But wait, there's more. Yeah. Frequently when confronted with this new information, our crescent friends will retort with something like, I've heard this a bunch of times, well, Yahweh's an Elohim of light, and that's why I go by the crescent. Okay? I'm certainly not going to argue the point about Yahweh being an Elohim of light. Right? But does that in and of itself mean that Yahweh wants for us to observe a crescent moon? All right? Look with me to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4. We're going to start reading in verse 9, which is on page 188. Deuteronomy 4, verse 9. Only guard yourself. And guard what? Your life diligently. Lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, unless they turn aside from your heart in all the days of your life, and you shall make them known to your children and your grandchildren. The day when you stood before Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb, Yahweh said to me, assemble the people to me, and I make them hear my words, so that they learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and teach them to their children. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the heart of the heavens. Darkness, cloud, and what are those next two words? Thick darkness. All right. Now, is this what we're reading here, calendar Torah? No, it's not. This is not calendar Torah. All right. It's what they saw when Yahweh spoke. All right. If you'll notice, it does not indicate when Yahweh spoke that they saw any light of the fire. All right. Only darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. Verse 12. And spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard a voice of words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. And he made known to you his covenant which he commanded you to do, the 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you laws and right rulings, for you to do them in the end which you pass over, in the land which you pass over to possess. Therefore, diligently guard yourselves. That's the second time that he said, diligently guard yourselves. All right? I don't think that this is just a casual suggestion. All right? For you saw no form when Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of fire. Hey, that's the second time that he's pointed out that there was no form seen when Yahweh spoke too. Huh. Could he be making a point? Lest you should do corruptly, verse 16, and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth, and means that this is in addition to what was just spoken. Okay? All right. Lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens and shall see the sun, which is a form that was worshipped by the pagans, and the moon, which is a form which was worshipped by the pagans, and the stars, which is a form that was worshipped by the pagans, all the hosts of heavens, and you be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yahweh your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under all the heavens. Right now, this is really begging the question with all this talk about Yahweh speaking from the darkness, and you saw no form, and guard your lives diligently, and do not do corruptly by making a carved image in the form of any figure on the earth. And he also attaches to, as part of this doing corruptly and bowing down to forms, the part about the sun and the moon and the stars, which are very important for the pagans. Since Since he starts his day when the orb or the greater light drops from sight, and you have no form of the sun to lift your eyes up to and see as a sign for the new day, don't you think that's just a wee bit plausible that rather than give the easily tempted children of Israel as a sign to start their months the exact form that the pagans all around them worshipped as the Queen Mother of Heaven, he would have instead given them the same kind of sign with the moon that he uses to speak to them with about the sun. Right? And that he, and when the old day has ended and the new day begins from the darkness when you saw no form, when you saw no form, isn't that just a wee bit plausible? I mean, everything about this passage is slamming home the idea that you should not have a form to worship. Guard yourself, and you saw no form when Yahweh spoke to you. But we're supposed to think that this applies to everything except the crescent queen of heaven, moon, that all of Israel's neighbors were worshiping. No, it seems to me that Yahweh would not tempt them. And he's also being consistent. He's being very consistent by having the moon become Kisa and withdraw itself just like the sun. Amen? All right? With no form. Okay, one last thing. I'm going to get in trouble with this one. See, some people really like to spiritualize things. Yeah, they do. A lot of people like to really spiritualize things. Yahweh is an Elohim of light. That's why I keep the crescent moon as an example. That's an example of that. It's a great example. I don't like to spiritualize things unless the context of the passage dictates that it's supposed to be spiritualized. All right? By using metaphoric language and the like. But if you want some spiritualization, try this one on for size. All right? You see, we believe that Genesis 1:14 reveals how Yahweh wants us to keep the calendar. Let's turn there. Genesis chapter 1. Bereshit chapter 1. I'll tell you what page it is when I get there. Oh, wait, it's on page 1. We're going to start reading in verse 14. Is it one in the new one? See, I never know. Genesis 1, verse 14. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs," and what's those next two words? Appointed times, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens, to give light on the earth, and it came to be so. And Elohim made two, what are those next two words? Great lights. The greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. So we got two great lights, a greater and a lesser, right? And the stars. And Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. To separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. But while we are spiritualizing and typing things, we can type some things to Messiah and to the Father. All right, I'd like to share a Yahweh Father and Yeshua Messiah parallel. Okay? Yeshua referred to himself as the light that shined in the darkness. Did he not? Yes, he did. And not only did he refer to himself as the light, he even refers to himself as the light of the world. Right? But he also makes it clear who was the greater light and who was the lesser light. The moon, which Yahweh called the lesser light, has no light of its own. Right? Right? Though it's always standing in the full view of the sun, which Yahweh called the greater light. All that the moon is able to do is reflect the light of the sun, greater light. All right? Whenever the lesser light is seen, it's always reflecting varying degrees of the greater light. Isn't that right? Okay. Are you with me so far? John chapter 8. It's going to be close to verse 10, but it's not going to be verse 10. John chapter 8, verse 12. Therefore YHWH spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall by no means walk in darkness, but possess the what? The light of life. All right. All right. This is what the light of the world, which shined in the darkness, had to say about his own esteem and how it relates to his Father's esteem. Look at John 5, verse 17. But YHWH answered them, my Father works until now, and I work. Because of this, then, the Yehudim, that would be the Jews, were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he also called Elohim his own Father, making himself equal with Elohim. Therefore YHWH responded and said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son is able to do what? None at all by himself, just like the moon. But only that which he sees the Father doing, because whatever he does, the Son also likewise does, just like the moon. Just, the moon has no light of its own. It gets its light from the greater light, right? Right? John chapter 14. John chapter 14, verse 9. YHWH said to him, have I been with you so long, and you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. And how do you say, show us the Father? See, he is showing a reflection of the greater light. Right? John 14, 28. You heard that I said to you, verse 28, I am going away, and I am coming to you. If you did love me, you would have rejoiced that I said I'm going to the Father, for my Father is what? Greater than I. Right? He is the light, but he says his Father is greater. Right? Another one, Psalm 84. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be on page 693. It's going to be close to verse 10. Psalm 84, verse 11. For Yahweh Elohim is a what? A sun and a shield. Yahweh gives favor and esteem. He withholds no good matter from those who walk blamelessly. All right, are we starting to see a correlation between the lesser and the greater light here? All right, YHWH is the light of the world. Oh, by the way, another little moon thing here is, you realize that the moon is actually the light of the earth? And I don't mean that it's what lights the earth up. I'm talking about the earth possesses the moon. Right? The sun shines on the whole solar system. Right? But the moon belongs to the earth. It's the earth's light. Other planets have other moons. That's ours. All right? YHWH is the light of the world, and he only does what he sees the Father doing, and the Father's greater. Right? Now remember, he did call himself the light of what? The world. All right? That shined in the darkness. Is it a mere coincidence that he is using this type of terminology to describe himself and his relationship with his Father? John chapter 1. John chapter 1, we're going to start reading in verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All came to be through Him, and without Him not even one came to be that came to be. In Him was life, and the life was the what? The light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, just like the moon, the lesser light. And the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was Yochanan. This one came for witness, to bear witness of the light, that all might believe through him. He was not that light, but that he might bear witness of that light. He was the true light, which enlightens every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. All right? The moon is the light of the world while it remains in Earth's orbit. Okay? The sun lights the whole heavens as well as the moon. John 9:5. I'll just read that one to you. You don't have to turn there if you just want to write it down. While I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. All right? There's a lot of light being shined on this subject, brother. Not much barley, but a lot of light. Now, why did I bring up barley? All right, well, ask yourself this. Now, it's not what you think. We'll talk about that later. Ask yourself this. Whether you're one of these folks that believes in the Abib sighting or not, either way, when does the yearly barley harvest at the beginning of the year become ready? Before or after the equinox? After the equinox. Okay? And what do we look to in order to know that the new month of the year has commenced? We look to the lesser light, of course. All right? But without the greater light doing its work, there would be no harvest at all. All right? Who is the master of the harvest? The sun or the moon then? It's the sun, which is the greater light. Right? That's the master of the harvest, right? The moon has no say-so at all about when the harvest is ready. Right? Right? What about the harvest of mankind? What did YHWH say? Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, verse 1, page 994. Verse 1. And after this, the master appointed 70 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him into every city and place where he himself was about to go. And then he said to them, the harvest indeed is great, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray the master of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. All right? Was YHWH telling his taught ones to pray to the light of the world, the lesser light, concerning this harvest? Or did he tell them to pray to the one greater than he? The one of whom the psalmist called a son, who YHWH called the master of the harvest. All right? This harvest is a result of the greater light, Yahweh the Father. All right? The lesser light gets his confirmation from he who is the greater light. Look at Revelation 14. Page 1203. Revelation 14 and verse 14. And I looked and saw a white cloud, and sitting on the clouds was one like what? The son of Adam, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. What do you do with a sickle? You harvest, right? All right. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place. Now, who's in the dwelling place? Yahweh the Father, right? Crying with a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, Send your sickle and reap, because the hour has come for you to reap, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. Read that again, verse 15. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, crying with a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, the one that looks like the son of Adam. Send your sickle and reap, because the hour has come for you to reap, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. And the one sitting on the cloud thrust his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. The lesser light follows the greater light, even in the harvest of the earth. Isn't that interesting? All right. On the morning of the last crescent, the moon always withdraws itself during the next 24-hour period from sunset to sunset. It then performs a little Yahweh-made miracle in which it moves into a position from the earth's vantage point. It stands in the full esteem of the greater light, and it shows no reflection at all to us. All right, no reflection at all. And we stand in only the direct sunlight as the moon rises with, on the day of the new moon, rises with and passes through the procession of the greater light, while both of them travel through the heavens together. Right? You see that? The sun and the moon are traveling through the heavens together, and you can't even see the lesser light because you're standing in the full esteem. It's in the full esteem of the greater light. Now, on this day, the greater and the lesser light proceed through the heavens together. They go at the same time on the same path, and you can't see the lesser light because they appear to be one great light. Right? They become the Hebrew word akkad. Right? Not one and the same, but one in duty, path, and direction. Right? John 10:30 says, I and my Father are one. John 17:22 says, and the esteem which you gave me I have given them, so that they might be one as we are one. All right? So they're not one and the same. They're one in the same direction, duty and path. Right? I would have to say that this is another uncanny parallel. Right? The funny thing that scientists know today is that the moon does this at a precise moment in time, which is universal to all of the inhabitants of the earth, no matter how far Israel's been scattered. No matter how far Israel's been scattered. There are no close calls. Right? The first day of the last crescent is when this happens, no matter how many days it stays dark. All right? I know people who say, well, you got to have light because Yahweh made a greater and a lesser light, and the lights are for appointed times. All right? The thing is, it's easy to see the moon in the sky pretty much anywhere you put it. You can put it anywhere in the sky. You can have crazy orbits and you can see the moon, all right? Except for one little bitty place. One little bitty place, and that place is in direct conjunction with the earth and sun. All right? The moon could wobble all over the heavens and never blink. Never withdraw itself. All right? And that would be a lot easier. That would be a lot easier for Yahweh. All right? Is it a mere coincidence that Yahweh has made the moon to come back to the same small point in the sky so that it blinks every single month with amazing accuracy and consistency, month after month, after year, after year, after decade, after century, after eon? No, this is an astronomical miracle of Yahweh that happens for everyone on earth at the same time and is shared between sunsets for everyone who's able to enjoy a sunset. All right, are you ready for the last and final parallel between Messiah and the lesser light? All right? How many times was Yahshua, this isn't a trick question, how many times was Yahshua resurrected, brought back to life, regenerated, whichever you prefer? Once, right? All right, we're all good with that. Was he resurrected when someone saw him stick his elbow out of the tomb just a little bit, where you can see that little crescent-shaped elbow sticking out? You don't think so? No, it couldn't be that, since no one saw him, since all the guards fainted from the messengers who rolled away the stone. All right? He was resurrected while he was inside the tomb where he lay, right? All right? And he was only resurrected once, right? All right? Some people say the dark moon theory can't work, since the Scripture refers to the day of the new moon, and the moon can actually be dark sometimes for up to 3 days. All right? How many days was he who called himself the light of the world, yet only reflected what he saw his Father doing, of which he called the greater? How long was he concealed in the tomb out of the sight of those in the earth? 3 days and 3 nights. He was restored and renewed, alive again, resurrected while concealed, where no one on earth could see him. And then, and only after that resurrection that took place inside the concealment of the tomb, did he reveal himself to man. Things that make you go, All right. All the way down to 3 days of concealment and renewal. All right. And like I said, I don't like to spiritualize stuff. I figured, what the hey? I'll try my hand at it and share one with you that I came up with. At least with that one, you can put it together with some Scripture and come up with some parallels. Pretty good, huh? Now, some people will misrepresent what I just said here. And they'll claim that Stan English is teaching people that Yahweh is the sun and Yahshua is the moon, and they'll be lying. Y'all would just be surprised at some of the lies that get told. Man. If they do that, they will be guilty of lying, bearing false witness. All right? All I have done is share a little parallel concerning some similarities. Could this be a model in the heavens? It's hard to say, but nevertheless, the Scripture seems to be indicating something rather than looking for the light of a crescent. It looks more like the rebirth and concealment, if you ask me. And it's about not the lightning of the moon, but rather by delight of the slivery moon. Yavrokeka Yahweh Baishmareka Yair Yahweh Panavaleka Bikaneka Yasa Yahweh Panavaleka Biasem Lakash Shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.